A view from the inside.
Hello. Cryptozoology is the study of the displaced or mythical beast, from pumas and the such, which are perfectly normal when discovered in, say, South America, but come across them in Exeter and you've got an odd situation, to the mighty Bigfoot and, perhaps most worryingly of all, the giant owl man.
My name is Jonathan Downes, and essentially I became a cryptozoologist because, unlike many of my friends and colleagues in the more conventional branches of zoology, I still believe that the truth might be out there.
I'm Muirhead. I'm interested in unusual snake stories from around the world, and I've been doing research on mystery animals in Hong Kong over the last 100 years.
My name is Pringle. I'm a professional zookeeper. I'm interested in all aspects of cryptozoology, but especially the continued existence of the Tasmanian wolf.
I'm Sally Parsons. I'm not a professional cryptozoologist, but I would like to know why scientists don't want to believe in animals that probably are out there, and why ordinary people persist in believing in animals that probably aren't.
My name's Darren Naish. I'm a student at the University of Southampton, where I study the evolution and ecology of marine reptiles.
I'm Richard Freeman, cryptozoologist, and I'm interested in the bizarre and the spectacular animals that still lurk in the wild and sometimes the not-so-wild corners of our planet.
I was wondering, you're all, of course, cryptozoology specialists and experts. I was wondering if any of you have actually seen any of these things with your own eyes.
Yeah, I've seen what I believe is one of the British mystery big cats. I was driving back from a gig in Brighton 10, 11 years ago, and we were driving back at some horrendous hour of the morning, about 2 or 3 in the morning, through the New Forest, and it was just the far side of Stony Cross, and we saw a large black creature, only for a very few seconds, and it disappeared into a hedge. I'm not prepared to say really any more than that.
Why?
Because I don't know what it was. I mean, I'm not prepared to say, hey, I saw a big mystery cat. I saw a large black animal I couldn't identify. And I reckon it was a puma. It was black, not
Is that because you've got a puma bias because you're a cryptozoology? Would somebody else have seen it and thought that's a very, very big dog?
Possibly. I mean, I wouldn't... It's like Bernard Heuvelmans, the zoologist who pretty well founded cryptozoology, has always said that he hoped he never saw anything because nobody believed him. And he spent ages sitting on the shores of Loch Ness hoping that he'd actually see something, but then if he actually did see something, not knowing actually how he would have dealt with it then. So, I mean, yes, I saw something. I don't know what it was. I reckon it was probably a big cat, but essentially, like I said, I'm a biased witness.
That must be the terrible thing about your profession in general, that being, obviously some people here are more scientific than others, but being on the fringes of zoology, your success would be your downfall. Finding out the truth of the matter would cause possible ridicule.
One of the things people have often said is that if a cryptozoological animal became a known animal, say by someone obtaining a specimen like a carcass or a thoroughly, a definite photo, it would take that animal away from cryptozoology. What we've seen so far is that when animals, such as there's a cat in the Americas called the onza, and there's also pygmy elephants, which have actually even been kept in zoos, when people actually attain these specimens, the controversy around them never stops, it's still going on. So, cryptozoology is within zoology. It's not a kind of a separate discipline, whereas where you have animals that are definitely cryptozoological as opposed to animals that are definitely not. But, these things, there's still a lot of mystery surrounding all of them.
Well, I was actually wondering whether there's animals which we now consider to be very much everyday creatures who were once thought of as mythical beasts. Like
the Vikings, the Norsemen, I had a legend of a creature called a kraken, which they said would attack their longships and drag them under and snatch men off the decks. And for centuries this was thought to be nothing but maritime legend until they started turning up alive, kicking and very dangerous off the coast of Newfoundland in the 1870s. And now this mythical creature, the kraken, has the Latin name Artiteuthis dux, the giant squid. That's just one of them. Mountain gorilla, nothing but a hairy monster from African folklore till the middle of the last century. So we can see an almost exact analogue between the gorilla and, say, things like the yeti today. Huge, hairy ape that lives in a remote place. Most scientists scoff at it like they used to do at the gorilla. But I've got no doubt that that one day they'll be proved wrong.
And big animals are still found, like sort of a couple every year. Large species of mammal. You know, some of them are very well known in the zoological community, and every year we now find new discoveries. My field is large marine animals, and last year a new species of beaked whale was found, and you don't find a new whale very often. And also a megamouth shark. Megamouth sharks were first found in 1976, and they're known throughout the Pacific. They've turned up Japan, Australia, Los Angeles, and Hawaii. Now they've actually turned up in the Atlantic, which is a real surprise to everyone.
Well, aren't they finding new marine animals constantly? Didn't they just a couple of weeks ago found shrimp the size of a platter?
In this case, I'm talking about 30-foot animals. You know, the sort of thing that zoologists would say that we don't tend to miss animals like that.
In the old literature, you do get accounts of animals that are known now, and that were known then, but you do also get accounts of animals that, by their description, could be unknown. So and they're treated all in the same texts. The animals that are quite elephant, lion, bear, is in the same body of literature as animals that are unknown now, which, to my mind, is more of a plausible evidence. It's just in their straight natural history textbooks of the time, talking, you know, like, say, Middle Ages China, 18th century China. You also get references to animals that are unknown now, perhaps because they've become extinct.
One of the things people have used to support the yeti and stuff is that the local people there treat it as a matter of fact, as they do the other animals that we know are real, because we have specimens in our museums.
So they're always surprised when people like you lot going up there to find the yeti. They're going, well,
well, I think the Vu Quang bovid, which was found, I mean, the locals have been eating it. And the first evidence of that was the horns which were found. And somebody said, well, what's this? And he said, oh, well, that's lunch, sort of thing. And I think, again, the comparison with the gorilla, when areas of the world are unknown, we tend to have this feeling that the world's largely explored now, and it's now the areas like Irian Jaya and Vietnam where people are getting, or Europeans and perhaps scientists are getting access for the first time, and are coming back with these animals which before, as Richard said, would have been dismissed as travellers' tales, or which the gorilla was for years.
So do we think that we're going to discover that the owl man actually exists? I mean, it's a terrifying thing. It's half man, half owl. All
Owl
terror.
man is a flesh and blood being, like the Vu Quang ox or megamouth shark. I think
it exists, but it doesn't exist defined by the same laws of physics as the other animals we've talked about, and indeed the 7 animals that are sitting around this table today. We're all defined, at least I assume, we are all carbon-based life forms, and we are all defined by the same laws of physics.
So the owl man
Something
exists.
like the owl man does exist, but it doesn't exist in the same, inverted commas, reality as we do.
It falls somewhere along on the spectrum that cryptozoology, within the cryptozoology envelope, which goes from obviously real animals way down the other end to things that are closer to ghosts and spectres, you know, stuff that's a bit mad.
And as scientists, you're not interested in the owl man, are you?
If you take a scientific viewpoint, you need data, but most scientists, you'll find, have an open mind and are willing to, I mean, you know, normal, everyday people. I mean, we all know people that believe in ghosts or have seen ghosts, and it's much the same with professionals. They're just people. So
that is data. Owlman has been. I don't actually believe in Owlman in the same way as I believe in, say, the megamouth, but
The megamouth.
Megamouth is a kind of shark. But I mean, people have seen Owlman, so that is data. So, but
Even
it's obviously competent in a test tube.
Who saw the owl man?
well, there's
18 or 19 people over the last 20 years.
And what
I've
are they-
interviewed one in particular.
who was...
It was a guy who prefers to be called Gavin. He's a very promising student, and he told me that any chance of a job at the end of getting his degree would go completely out the window if he'd gone public and said, yes, I did see a feathered humanoid in a churchyard in southern Cornwall. Because it's the sort of thing which people find very hard to deal with. It's a total turning around, turning inside out of your worldview, your preconceptions. He saw this thing, and he didn't realise at the time, but he was just one in a whole string of sightings that had happened over a period of about 20 years.
In many different places, or all?
Nope, all within a very few 100 yards of each other.
Really? So there's a chance that the Owlman exists, but there's just one Owlman?
The Owlman does exist. There are related phenomena all across the world. There are even similar phenomena being reported from parts of Devon and Cornwall in historic times, but it does exist, but it isn't defined by the same laws of reality as the animals which are more properly included in cryptozoology.
Even if there isn't some creature out there that supposedly looks like a half-man, half-bird thing that haunts graveyards or whatever, there is still something worthy of attention, because if people say they saw it, why did they say they saw it? I mean,
absolutely.
Even if they just made it up, why did they make it up? I mean, that's where it becomes worthy of psychological analysis.
I think a lot
analysis.
Of things, cryptozoology does overlap very strongly with folklore elements, because so much is eyewitnesses, and you're dealing with, again, a cultural view of the world. People have this need to believe in things, explain things, and you can find an amazing correlation of legends, for example, about lakes. Sometimes as people have migrated, you will find the same legends. Just briefly touching on lake monsters, you'll find that a lake that has a lake monster is also reputed to be bottomless. The bodies that go into it never come up, that it's connected with tunnels to other lakes or the sea. They're all folklore images, and it's very difficult to say where people are seeing something real and people are dismissing it as folklore, and that there's a real animal at the bottom of it, which does happen in a lot of cases, or where it wasn't a real animal, but there's such a sort of almost a folk memory that everyone comes up with the same images to explain something at a certain time.
And these images are quite often found in cultures that have had no or minimal contact between each other. So it's not just
See, that's all
a
interesting.
spread.
That is very interesting. And the fact that 17 or 18 people have seen, and I apologise for going back to the Owlman, because I know that it annoys some of you because you think that, and it's true that cryptozoology is a more serious study than constant harping on about the Owlman. But I'm going to carry on discussing the Owlman for a while, then we can move on to other subjects. 17 or 18 people have all seen the Owlman in the same couple of 100 yards. So either there's a shared psychological madness in its broadest sense, or there's a guy with very feathery skin, or there's an Owlman.
There's a case in Namibia which has, I may be stretching a point, but some parallels with the Owlman. And to take what Sally said, you can get cases where you get a completely paranormal, well, I see paranormal entity, complete flesh and blood animal, like what I was mentioning, Megamouth. But there's this case in Namibia of a snake that's supposed to be able to fly. In 1942, it flew off a cliff and attacked a 12-year-old white farmer. But it left tracks. It actually, sort of a kind of mark was photographed. This was shown on a TV documentary broadcast in South Africa about a year or two ago. So, to my mind, the fact that it leaves a mark suggests that it could be a kind of flesh and blood thing. But it sort of has a light, and the light hovers. And a bit like in the West, when some people see a hovering light, they think UFO. When the Nama tribe in this part of Namibia see the hovering light, they think flying snake. So they're
both unidentified flying objects, and I'm not being silly.
The interesting thing is that with that one, there's a lot of concrete information that suggests there may be an unknown snake. But also what I found interesting when Richard contacted me about it was, I looked back through some of my books, that Namibia was one of the German colonies in Africa. And I would love to know when this legend started to gain the light on the head, because the German folklore has a lightning snake, which goes back to the Middle Ages, which is a flying snake with a light on its head. And it seems such a coincidence that you've got this influence has come in. Now, does the African legend of the flying snake with the light on its head actually predate the German influence? Or is this something that has been grafted on to a story that was there?
So
Has it
somebody
grown?
was telling stories in the mission school.
If you want to talk man to man,
Dial 0891 34 34 34.
and make contact with men you'd like to know better. When you call, you can exchange messages with guys online now.
Or perhaps you're just curious to know what people are saying. It's fast.
It's friendly.
It's fun.
Whether you're talking or listening,
So call 0891 34
34.
34.
and make contact with men you'd like to know better. Call now.
For reading or to see objects at any distance, distance no object, and a wider field of vision than ever, ask for genuine Varilux lenses. Get closer to natural vision.
What is all the fuss about?
Pet City is now Pet Smart.
You woke me up for that.
Look, Pedigree Chum, 44p a can, Chappie, 59p, Whiskers, 45p.
Whiskers, 45p. It's true. It says PetSmart intend to have the lowest prices on pet food. This is fantastic news. Why didn't you wake me earlier?
If you liked Pet City, you'll love PetSmart, and you'll love the prices.
Over 400,000 prizes were won last Wednesday.
It's you.
This week, it could be you.
Fruitful from shredded wheat. It's full of the taste of sun-ripened fruit.
And crunchy golden whole wheat.
Oh, you mean full of fruit?
Yeah.
Full of taste?
Yeah! Crunchy golden whole wheat is raisin bone, banana bone, coconut and papaya bone.
Mmm, that looks delicious.
Full of taste, and from now on, we're gonna wake up to a fruitful day.
Fruitful from shredded wheat. Wake up to a fruitful day.
I work for Royal London. I come from round here, so I know these people really well. And because I know them better, I can advise them better.
Royal London Insurance.
There's long been a debate in cryptozoology about there are literal cryptozoologists who say that all of these things stem from real sightings of real animals. Then there are folklorists and anthropologists that say none of these sightings have anything to do with anything that's real in nature. It's what's generated in the human mind, what people imagine to be out there, what people want to be out there, the influence that people get from their cultural landscape and how they they make their own beasts out of it. Like
I reckon, as always, the truth is somewhere in between. It's got all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are an infinite number of different cultural pressures and zoological pressures, and there are so many different things which are acting together in order to produce what we think of as an unknown animal. How, like Richard was talking about the flying snake of Namibia, how sightings of what sounds very much like a large unknown species of snake, which quite possibly has got extended or can extend its rib cage, with skin spread over its rib cage, like some of the gliding reptiles from other parts of the world are known to do, so it can glide. How that has been mixed up with folklore, genuine paranormal, weird stuff, quite probably misreporting, quite probably something that somebody made up for the Namibian version of the Sunday Sport, and quite possibly the fact that the people in Namibia talk in a very strange clicking language, which is practically impossible to translate literally. And when you think of the nuances which there are in our language, you can say exactly the same words and mean 3 or 4 different things.
When you're clicking.
When you're clicking.
Could be hundreds of them.
I did actually show Richard's film to somebody who has some knowledge both of the country and of the language, and she said that several of the people were genuinely saying what they thought they'd said, but a couple of the most, hey, great, here's a flying snake with a light on its head, A, that the person who was interviewing was leading the witness, and B, the people from the village were just thinking, this guy's an idiot, let's wind him up.
Of course.
Alan, you've been quite quiet so far. Now, I imagine almost like a mythical beast.
Does he really exist?
But and I assume that's because, as a zookeeper and as somebody very much on the serious side of cryptozoology, all this talk of owl men and the such is quite low rent.
Well, I like to keep an open mind. You have to. That's what cryptozoology is all about. But yeah, I know what you mean. I'm a flesh and blood animal person, so.
And of course, in reality, there's things, you know, equally as exciting as the owl men. For instance, the death worm of Mongolia, which electrocutes people, which is one of your specialities.
Well, not a speciality. It's something I only really found out about it in the past couple of years from Dr. Carl Schuker, who sort of blew me away with it. With most cryptozoological animals, you can hazard a guess that it's going to be a mammal, a bird, reptile, or something. But this is like, these people here all know about it, so it's like nothing else on Earth. Some sort of metre-long life form that lives under the sand in Mongolia. It can spit a corrosive substance, like some sort of venom that can actually burn through things, and it can kill, apparently, with electricity. There have been cases of camels stepping on these things and dropping dead, and at least one human who's been killed by it.
It sounds just like the film June.
Or Tremors. It sounds like Tremors.
Tremors.
But, so this, I've spent many an evening with friends trying to work out what this could be. We know that fish can generate electricity, but a fish in the desert is. But then it's cryptozoology, so you don't know. But it's a difficult thing to look for as well.
A fish needs water to generate its electric field as well.
What about that catfish? That weird little red catfish?
That's not generating electricity, but
no, but
a terrestrial fish.
That doesn't live in water.
Is it an electricity-type substance?
No, but there's a precedent that fish don't have to live in water.
Well, we're all fishes that don't live in water.
Can I just say about cryptozoology, I don't think it's always helpful to sort of say there's a serious side and there's a light side, because I think that might kind of put people off, especially scientists who might be wavering in their own mind as to, and also I sort of, as a kind of semi-desperate gesture, the late Sir Lawrence van der Post, kind of thinking, well, he's somebody who spent a lot of time in Africa. Maybe he knows a bit about the flying snake in Namibia, and he wrote me a short letter back saying, I could write you a whole screed on flying snakes in Africa, and I've heard of them from East Africa. So, kind of maybe the unlikeliest people do get it. And Gerald Durrell is a case in point.
When I was in East Africa, I was told there was an island in one of the rivers. It wasn't a major river. I can't remember what the river was now, because it was quite some time ago, but I was told by a man who lived there in his childhood that it was inhabited by flying snakes. And at the time, I was only about 14, and I remember knowing that flying snakes only come from Asia, supposedly only come from Asia. So I just put it down to somebody releasing some there, because I'd never heard of legends of flying snakes before. But
well, there's legends of flying snakes in Wales.
Are there?
Yeah. Morgan, the 19th century.
I'm from Glamorgan, I've never seen one.
And the Kenilworth Castle. There's legends of flying snakes in the south of France.
Oh, yeah. And this, I don't think I've told any of you guys this, but there's a acquaintance of mine who claims that he's got video taken on a crop circle last year, which appears to show flying snakes flying around.
I was there when he said it.
Yeah, you were there. And
has he shown you the video?
Not yet, no.
Flying snakes at a crop circle?
Flying
I'm surprised that you
snakes
didn't
on a crop
ask to
circle.
see the video straight away. I know I would have.
I would have done, apart from the fact that we live at opposite end of the country. And this is just one of the things that people phone. I mean, people phone me up at ridiculous hours of the night from all over the world with all sorts of things. And you can't chase everything at once. I mean, there is a fascinating piece of crop circle film which is doing the rounds at the moment, which, to my mind at least, tends to bear out some of the theories which Constable came up with about UFOs being sky beasts, UFOs actually being animate objects that live in a slightly different reality. And I've seen some very exciting video of what appears to be glowing balls of light flying over a field and a crop circle being formed. Well, there's another one that's actually turned up, and I can't mention names yet, but it comes from the same source as the one that's actually been shown in 14 times.
But obviously crop circles are...
But this apparently shows a very similar thing, but it also shows some police keeping the public away and putting their hand over the video camera at the same time. And I'm sorry if we're straying into X-Files territory here, because, I mean, I don't know.
How long it'd be before that programme had to be mentioned?
Can I just shift it back?
Of course, the X-Files have made me a lot of money.
It's funny because I do such a tiny amount of, but a little bit of tension, because it's such a wide area, and you've got on one side of the spectrum someone like John, on the other side of the spectrum people like you two, and there's so few areas like this where the two twains meet.
I'll give you something where the two twains meet. The Sasquatch.
Yes.
The North American Yeti. Up in the northern part of Canada and the US, up in the Great Pine Forests, you got reports of these things which, to all intents and purposes, are virtually identical to the Yeti. 8 to 10 feet tall, shaggy bipedal apes, acting in the way you expect, trying to avoid human beings, acting like real animals. Then you have bizarre reports from places like the Bible Belt in the Midwest, places that could not possibly support such a creature, where there are no big woods, they're just fields, open fields.
Central Park in New York.
Yeah, they get right the way across along the East Coast now.
And not only that, is that these out-of-place Sasquatches tend to act in a very, very bizarre manner. Often they're very aggressive. Often they've been shot at with powerful firearms at a point-blank range, which would kill a gorilla.
Do you think they're aggressive because they've been displaced?
I've no idea, but I think the aggression has something to do with them not being real animals.
I think when they started with Bigfoot, it started off very much as is there a Yeti in North America? There are huge areas of pine forest, as Richard says, it would be a good habitat. And then it was a bit like ley lines, which started off as just prehistoric tracks, and then people found they didn't fit, so they started to become energy lines. People were apparently seeing these things in places that didn't fit, and then they got into the ufology literature, the stinking creature always associated with UFOs, red eyes and that. And those books started to pick up the Sasquatch, and then that generates further stories because everybody quotes everybody else and puts an extra little bit in.
I think explosion of interest in the occult in the last, we'll say 30, 40 years, well not explosion, but the increase is opening a doorway into an invisible world, that was always there. Like you have stories in the Bible about angels. And you get, this is kind of like the dark side of that. And it's...
The door was always there, and recent events have essentially just shoved a bit of wood underneath the door so it remains more open.
And it's funny that people are getting into things that I really don't, it's kind of
and it goes in
dangerous.
fashions.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
there's about 6 books come out on angels. We are seeing angels again.
Oh, fairies.
We're having a kickback. Yeah.
Fairies is the next thing.
Me and John have a tension about this, but kind of, I never give him a really hard time about it.
What, a bet?
No, I just occasionally
say,
look...
Do you think John's letting the side down?
No, John's admitted
I'm not a cryptozoologist. I'm a Fortean zoologist. I study the whole thing. But I have never claimed that things like the owl man, things like some of the flying snakes, things like some of the other things we've discussed are cryptids. They're not animals which cryptozoology per se is supposed to study, because cryptozoology is the study of hidden or unknown species.
I think one of the problems is we tend to think that you're going to have a discipline these days and that you're going to have a very narrow focus. If you think of the past, the 18th, 19th century, I think so. When you get a scientist, and he was a scientist, somebody like Squire Waterton, who did the first description, accurate description of the sloth and its lifestyle before that. They thought, sloth, bizarre, weird, can't walk, you know. And he's saying, no, this is brilliantly adaptive for living in trees, and that's why it's built like it is. And he suggested a reserve for the American bald eagle before anybody else had ever thought of it, because he's saying in the 18th century, you know, this animal is going to go extinct. But this is also the guy who was faking beast men, dissecting gorillas on his dining table. You know, I mean, the guy was making fakes.
And he was also writing appalling poetry.
I mean,
and trying to seduce all the women in the area.
Yeah, he's crazy, but a lot of zoologists will say, Squire Waterton.
It's you, isn't it?
He was dissecting gorillas on his dining table.
Oh, yes, he used to do it as a party trick. You know, he'd have people around to dinner and say, oh, by the way, we're just going to dissect this creature.
See that overblown fraud? That's you.
He was a very strange guy, but he still did do a lot of good scientific stuff.
The important thing in research, though, we always get this word, there are reports of. Reports of, you hear it the whole time, but
you have to go back to the source.
In research, you have primary sources and secondary sources. The primary sources be diaries, letters, photographs, negatives of photographs, maybe cine film. It's not just enough to have some book you might have, you know, picked up somewhere says it. Okay, I admit that I found that out through the Namibian. I first found the book in Charing Cross Road, but then I went back. I tried to get back to the sources.
To actually go to Namibia.
Well, I'll give you a good
I'd like
example.
To go, yeah, but yeah.
All the books that have ever been written about Owlman, they've all quoted an account from a Cornish newspaper in the 1920s, which has been quoted as being about a mysterious bird which attacked two children on, and wait for this, on a hill called Mount Hawk, which has always been a lovely piece of lexi linking. And all these books have quoted the same source. But the same source hasn't been that piece from the Cornish Echo. The source was actually from a pamphlet written by a guy called Anthony Mornan Pellow, who quoted the Cornish Echo piece. He quoted about 3 lines of the Cornish Echo piece. Last year, I went back and found the original piece of the Cornish Echo, and it's a very interesting story, but it's got absolutely damn all to do with the Owlman. The reason that this thing attacked 2 children is it was a type of goose. It was a goose of some sort that was dying, that actually had a gash halfway down its body, and its entrails and blood were pouring out, and the kids had poked it with a stick, so of course it attacked them. It's interesting. Nobody did manage to identify the bird, and it's a fascinating thing because it doesn't appear to correlate with any known species of British waterfowl. It's got damn all to do with the Owlman.
Another piece
and that's been quoted and quoted and quoted and quoted and quoted.
And that, Alan, is where your side of it comes in, really, because you're more interested in displaced animals and animals which shouldn't be there, perhaps.
Well, animals that haven't been discovered. I mean, yeah, going mainly on, like my friend here was saying, you know, the Namibian thing, you know, things that are known to the local people, and then along comes a Westerner and suddenly discovers it. But very often, like the Kisdale Carpe, one of the most famous animals known, discovered in 1901, claimed at the time to be the last large mammal discovery, known to the Pygmies since time began. And they actually said to Sir Harry Johnson, didn't bother telling you about it because it's there, we thought you'd know about it, you know, so...
Do you trail them? Do you actually go off and try and find these?
I don't, I would. It's all down to money, isn't it? That's all it's down to. You know, win the lottery tomorrow, I'll be off. But
do any of you go
everything
off
takes money.
and trail them out in the field?
Only on the local scale. A local pub, I found they have a photo of a dead whale on the wall. This is one of the things I've looked into recently. The whale, it was shot in the summer of 1932 and it was officially identified as a narwhal. The problem is there's no records of it anywhere. I've gone through all the records of stranded whales because they're kept quite meticulously. Because
it ain't a narwhal either, is it?
It's, and I have the photo here.
Just the original photo from the pub
wall?
wall?
That's a photocopy. And it's absolutely nothing like a narwhal at all. It's not a narwhal. But I kind of know my whales and I don't know what that is. So that's it's a local mystery that I'm looking into. And what I found, which was a bit of a problem, was that a whale was killed in the same place in the same year, but is an entirely different animal. that one is a bottlenose dolphin, obviously, and it's from the same place, the same year, 1932, but it's nothing to do with the animal which is supposed to be a narwhal. The funny thing is, you know, narwhals and dolphins, in actual fact, they don't often swim up rivers in Hampshire.
My guru insists I fly Air Canada Executive First to celebrate my love of personal space. My fun therapist prescribes Air Canada's multi-language personal video for my on-board entertainment. Ah, Hindi, my favorite. And my personal treat trainer demands I take the hot cookies and ice cream whenever offered. While my rehydration counselor finds my personal supply of mineral water quite irresistible. Give me that! Down!
Little details and a lot of legroom make our Executive First a breath of fresh air.
A new wave of freshness is coming with new Jif Mousse Pacific Wave. Just spray and rinse for a brilliant shine and a pure fresh smell. New Jif Mousse Pacific Wave.
Our baby magazine shows Persil non-bio powder for gentleness on baby's skin, fragrance, value and cleaning performance to win its Best Buy award.
There's a long night ahead, but you can still sleep easy. Bodyform Good Night with Wings is extra long, extra absorbent and has special leakage barriers to protect you all night long. The day looks brighter after a good night's sleep.
Who killed Bob Holness?
Most refreshing. But I'm accusing you, a Lucy Fox, of strangling your lover, Bob Holness.
You're barking in the wrong bush, Inspector. Bob was very close to Dick. Dick is somewhat unstable and attacked Bobby from behind.
Win one of the millions of instant prizes worth up to £10,000.
10,000?
In Star Wars packs of Walker's Crisps and Snacks.
I was wondering whether any people have ever been mistaken for mythical animals.
It's a theory. It's a theory that there's, from literally every continent in the world. Yeah.
The continued Neanderthal survival comes under cryptozoology. So, in Mongolia, so.
Some people even think that some of the wild men from around the world are people like us that have gone feral, that are living wild and living off the land, and maybe they've got a lot of body hair or something, but...
I mean, there are things like, one of the things that used to appear that was appearing in 14 Times recently was the green kitten. There was this kitten that had this greenish fur. It's apparently grown out now and it's just a nice grey kitten. But they were doing analysis of the fur and see if it had got copper in it and all this sort of thing. I have a colleague who I met at one of the young conventions, and there are reports of green children in this country. Now, they're dismissed as folklore. He's done quite considered...
green dog.
I've seen a green dog in Middlesbrough.
Really?
There's a report in the paper, meet the peppermint pup. and the peppermint pup was actually a few hundred yards from my front door. So I went
Really?
along and took a photo of the peppermint patch. But actually it didn't come out as it. So, as always happens, the photo didn't come out, probably because I didn't have a flash or something. All the other, the litter was perfectly normal. Labrador, it was a Labrador. They were white, black, and one rather kind of pathetic looking green. But it wasn't, it was kind of like a, almost like a fluorescent green. It wasn't like, you know, the kind of green of your jumper.
How did they feel about it? Because in olden days, of course, if you had a green dog, you'd be you know, immediately drowned as a witch, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Well, it's like almost complete reversal. Nowadays, you're a celebrity if you've got a green dog.
And I mean, it's very interesting the way people do react to these sort of beasts. I mean, talking again about the Yeti, you know, the Nepalese take it as a matter of course. We send loads of people out there looking for it. The Almas, and then we debate about whether it's folkloric or whether it's real, and everybody says, no, it's not, yes, it is, no, it's not, it's a fake. The Soviets, who have the Almas in the mountains, said, we don't know whether these things are real or not. We don't know whether they're Neanderthal survivors, ape men, or what they are. So we'll put a preservation order on them. Don't shoot them.
Some of the creatures that are reported from the British Isles that most people haven't heard of are truly incredible.
Like what?
Well, binturongs, which are a large type of black furry civet, carnivorous animals with prehensile tails, eat fruit and stuff, live in trees in Southeast Asia. They've actually been reported from, I think, Exmoor, there's a couple, and maybe there was one in Wales recently.
There was one in
Last year we had a coati caught and brought into us where I work in Somerset.
What?
A coati, it's like a raccoon from South America.
With a long nose.
You know, so that was obviously an escape pet.
Well, the thing is,
I think the bulk of the animals in captivity in Britain are in private collections. Zoos is the tip of the iceberg. There's so many private collections, and despite laying aside the possibility that they're, you know, people are worried and they let them go, just the sheer number of escapes. I mean, every collection in the country has escapes somewhere along the line, especially birds. You know.
With some of the smaller
depending on what it is,
cats,
it could last quite a
But then
long
again,
time.
some of the smaller cats can interbreed.
Yeah, well, they
with
would be
each other.
referrals and stuff, aren't they?
And
well,
possibly
leopard cats, jungle cats, and
yeah, and leopard cats and
crossbreeding.
domestic cats as well will do it. You know.
I don't think some of the mystery cats are really mysteries. It's just maybe they've been released. So maybe the...
It depends on your definition of mystery. A mystery is a mystery until you know what the answer is.
You know what the answer is by going a little bit further. Like there's this case, I went down to the Public Records Office from my university a few weeks ago. We had a day school on how to use Public Records Office in London. And there's this thin folder about a kangaroo washed ashore near Southampton in 1904. I was like, what? What's this? John doesn't know about this. Waiting to tell it. Yeah, so what is a kangaroo doing in the English Channel in 1904? But it turns out that maybe they, apparently, they used to carry kangaroos as mascots on ships going through the English Channel.
Really? For luck?
Good elephant.
Yeah,
carcasses.
for luck.
Yeah.
Queensland and Cornwall.
But then again, with kangaroos, a man called Mr. Fish, who lived in Sidmouth in the middle of the last century, he was breeding wallabies in Woodbury Salton, I think it was, as early as 1850. Because I know in 1861 or I can't remember the date of the Devil's Footprints sightings, but 1861, 1864, something like that. The local papers actually blamed Mr. Fish's wallabies because they were unusual animals that kept on getting out.
I'm going to ask about these skulls. They've been sitting here the whole time and we haven't mentioned them once. I can only see the back of that one, but it looks vaguely human to me from the back of it.
It's just a human skull.
Just your average human skull, which you
Well, I
brought
don't know if
along
it's average,
just
but
for creepy purposes.
it's John's.
The human skull lives on my sitting room wall. Well, in fact, so does the whale skull. But I was given this skeleton, and it was in the back of my car, in the boot, with 2 plastic submachine guns that I'd had for a fancy dress party. And the police stopped me with a human body and 2 machine guns in the back of the car.
It's always the way.
Don't you just believe it?
So what happened? They opened up the boat.
And they said, you have got a human body and 2 submachine guns in there. I said, yes.
And
what are you going to do about it? Then I showed them that the submachine guns were plastic and the human body had been dead for over 150 years and was obviously a prepared medical specimen. And they burst out laughing and didn't actually bother to look at my tax disc, which was rather good.
For your stash of drugs under the dashboard.
It's a good opportunity, this, to raise the point that the average person in the street, I hate to use that cliche, has got no idea when it comes to identifying live animals, never mind skeletal material. I've seen 2 people holding a skull and arguing as to whether it was a rat or a squirrel or something. They were holding the skull and saying, yeah, there was obviously a headpiece here and a long piece, and they were saying, this is the backbone here. And when I pointed out to them it was a curlew skull.
Yeah.
It was a bird skull, and the bit that they thought was the spine was the beak of the bird.
Holding
And the
it the wrong way
eye
round.
sockets, they were holding it the wrong way around. And even live animals, I mean, every year I have someone phone up saying to me, no matter where you're working, every zookeeper will tell you this. People say, I found something in the garden, a bird, can I bring it? It's injured. And you say, identify it, tell me what it is. And they'll describe it over the phone. And you'll get a baby falcon described to you. And they bring it in, it's a swift. I've had a heron described to me, it was brought in, it was a cormorant. I mean, people have got no idea. So when they see that stuff that's fairly well known, you know, you'd expect them to know what they're looking at. So when they see something slightly out of the ordinary, they go into overdrive, you know. They exaggerate, and you feel, should I point it out to these people, you know?
Typical things that people see something, like John, he saw something very quickly, and he's somebody who's probably clued up enough to think, what size is it? Give myself a reference. The classic one is, it was a cat and it was bigger than my Labrador. Now, the Labrador's standing next to you.
Yeah.
Did they take any reference to how far away that cat was? Did they quickly, had they read their Arthur Ransom book, did they quickly take a cross bearing and think, right, it was standing there, now I'll go and stand my Labrador there and come back to where I was and see how big it was?
No, because most people, like me, they see out the corner of their eye,
Yeah.
what the bloody hell was that? And most people actually don't think.
What about the giant earwig?
Oh, giant earwigs, yes. I mean, this is the other thing about cryptozoology. I mean, it may be something to do with animals that...
got giant ears.
Animals that are great at disappearing. They can disappear for hundreds of years, in some cases millions of years.
And then come back again?
Yeah, I mean, this giant earwig, and we're talking giant, we're talking sort of about that length, sort of 3-4 inches, but it was originally described in 1798, lived on St Helena, where Napoleon was exiled, and it was given a name, and then it got confused with another species of earwig that lived on St Helena, so they thought, oh yeah, there's just a shore earwig. 1962, two ornithologists were looking for bird bones on St Helena, and they found the pincers of an extremely large earwig. And they realised, no, they're not fossilised. And so they took them back, and it was confirmed that, yes, this was a giant earwig. But by this time, everybody had forgotten there ever was one, so it was given a second name. And,
so were they hiding out, these earwigs?
Yeah, well, earwigs live under stones. If you know about earwigs, they live under stones. How often do you see an earwig in your garden, unless you're digging and you actually disturb it?
Within the last 6 months, they've just rediscovered the European pond tortoise in Denmark for the first time in 2,000 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
No, but like it says on a well-known television advert, I know a man who has.
I'm going to say, so I was just going to say, this is great. You're not afraid to travel the world looking for terrifying mythical beasts.
No, I am.
Yet
I've never travelled the world looking for terrifying mythical beasts.
You're talking about pond turtles, not
It's
terrifying
a
mythical
pond
beasts.
turtle. I actually had a pair of them in my bath once. But
There's this thing about
Did they
niches.
hurt?
There are places that seem to be kind of isolated, like islands. Like there's a remote part of Venezuela, where a couple of years ago I think they discovered some frogs or something, and there's like isolated like the Himalayas. And John and I have been doing some research on Hong Kong, and we've discovered at least half a dozen types of animals that are not in the official, semi-official textbooks.
And Hong Kong's probably the most densely populated place on Earth.
Yeah. There were wolves there before the First World War. No textbook says there should be. There were a giant scorpion, two giant scorpions were found there.
And they were videoed only a few
They were
weeks ago.
videoed, yeah. And I've just written to the guy who's got access to the video. There's a type of giant salamander found there in the 20s, which was given, I don't know what the opinion of it is now, but at the time it's given a new scientific name.
These days it is actually usually classed as being just a colour variant of the Chinese giant salamander, but in my opinion at least, it's morphologically different enough to deserve separate species.
Can I ask, John, what first got you fascinated in this area? Was it for as long as you can remember when you were a child?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually my mum's fault, because I was brought up in Hong Kong. My mum went to the library and got out, as she used to once a week, and got out books for me and my brother. And one of them, one week, was a book called Myth or Monster, which was I've never seen it since. I don't know who wrote it, but essentially it was a children's retelling of Bernard Heuvelmann's On the Track of Unknown Animals. And I was hooked. And that was 30 years ago, and I've been hooked ever since.
Johnny's based in Exeter, which of course is a hub of a lot of a lot of
You
bizarre
can't move
activity.
for beasts.
It is,
Well,
it is since I moved there.
Yeah, what we find on some of these things are most productive when they're done entirely on a local level, like based in Exeter or thinking just about Hong Kong. The amount of stuff you can churn up from the local literature is quite vast.
And that's just in the English language. We found, when John first told me about this project about a year and a half ago, I was very sceptical. I think Hong Kong, having lived out there, I knew the kind of,
Like
the urban...
3 cardboard boxes full of files of stuff, mostly which Richard's found.
But I mean, I just can't. It's if the stuff looks for me. I don't necessarily have to do a great deal of work.
So,
and how do you actually go about finding a cryptozoological beast? What equipment? Is there any specialist equipment that you need?
You need to ask Richard about that.
I'm hoping this summer to take an expedition into central and northeastern Tasmania to look for the thylacine or marsupial wolf, which is the carnivorous equivalent of a wolf. If you imagine a wolf with the stripes of a tiger, a very long, elegant, stiff tail and jaws that can hinge open almost like a crocodile's.
Goodness.
This thing once lived right across New Guinea, right across Australia, down to Tasmania.
I did think that all wolves were carnivorous.
Sorry?
Yeah, it's a marsupial version. It's a marsupial
This isn't a
version.
true wolf, it's a marsupial. It just occupies a similar ecological niche. One of the things about this particular animal is that it's not supposed to favour carrion. Carrion. It's
Carrion.
supposed to eat the soft organs of its victims and drink the blood, then leave the rest for the scavenging Tasmanian devils. So I'm hoping to take some distress calls of prey species like the redneck wallaby and the common wombat.
What, taping them?
Yeah, and play them to try and attract it, rather than leaving out carcasses.
Yeah, he spent the last 6 months going around all the zoos in Britain and finding ones that have got redneck wallabies and things. Distressing them. He's been showing them tapes of neighbours all day until they are really distressed.
How do you come across tapes of distressed animals?
That's a good question. I haven't got to them yet.
Do you think you're going to have to distress them yourself?
I wrote off to the Sound Archive, and they wrote back saying, yes, we've got the distress calls of the redneck wallaby and the wombat, but you can't have them because they're copyrighted. How do you copyright an animal's sound?
Being distressed, I know.
Yes.
It's the tape.
God PLC.
But
I mean, that's terrible, because not only are these people going out and distressing them, but then they're copyrighting
no,
it.
they're just recording them from nature, they're not...
The other thing we're going to do is try and disguise our scent with eucalyptus oil, so we don't smell foreign.
That's fun.
Do they not like the smell?
Done that.
Well, they have very keen sense of smell, apparently.
I think the point Richard's making is you've got to go out there and you've got to blend in. It might take weeks, it might take months, but nothing out of the ordinary, because this thing is so in tune with its environment, it'll spot any change, any smell, any sound.
To extrapolate a bit, these things are thought to have become extinct on New Guinea and the mainland round about 5,000 years ago, if memory serves. But they lingered on in Tasmania because the dingo, the placental dog, which can breed faster, never ever brought to Tasmania. So this creature hung on there until the white man came over and proceeded to slaughter every single Tasmanian aborigine, all of the black Tasmanian emus, and then supposedly all of the thylacines, because they preyed on the white settlers' sheep. The last one was supposed to have died in Hobart Zoo in 1936. But we've had persistent reports ever since, and 2 recent ones, one in, I think, 81, 82 by a guy called Hans Narding, who's a wildlife researcher. He saw one for 5 minutes from 20 feet away. Now, this is a wildlife researcher, it's not your average Joe out the street. Then in 95, a guy called Charlie Beasley, who worked with the Parks Department, Wildlife, he observed one through binoculars for about 3 minutes. So these are people who know what they're talking about.
Thylacines were once described as the fellest of predatory beasts or something like that. They've been known to bite through the skulls of dogs. I mean,
is it propaganda?
Propaganda by the sheep farmers at the time, I think.
That was by Richard Owen in his description of it.
As far as I know, there's never been an attack on a human being by
There's one.
There's
one. There's one.
that bit a girl in the arm.
There's a toothless one, and the boy fought it off with a stick.
Got it toothless.
David Flay that got bitten by one. The Australian naturalist David Flay got bitten by one. Actually, when it was one of the last ones to die in
Hobart Zoo. He was in enclosed space with it, though, wasn't he?
Yeah, still a great thing to be bitten.
I think, Richard, Darren's right. There was one recorded attack, but that sounds a bit like the man-eating lion. It's so old and so toothless it's going for anything it can find, and it was probably snoozing and got startled.
A far more terrifying thing that may be in the Australian outback, according to some researchers, is a thing called the Queensland tiger, which is essentially it's a theorised animal for which there isn't much material evidence. It's a kind of marsupial tiger with nice stripes, a long tail and pointy ears and everything, and nasty big teeth and claws, climbs trees, and there have been attacks of people in the outback, and of course there's a lot of disappearances in the outback as well, and some people have suggested that maybe they're victims of the Queensland tiger. And of course there's a fossil animal called the Thylacoleo, which of course we don't have its fossil colour or coat, but it's essentially just a marsupial big cat. And some people have suggested that the Queensland tiger is Thylacoleo in the modern day, or perhaps until recently, because sightings have tailed off now. But
I think Australia would be one of the places to live. If you're a cryptozoologist and you want to go and live somewhere, Australia is probably the place that's civilised that you can actually do stuff in.
But it's got a few of them already. It's got quite a few researchers who cover the ground, because
it's so big.
Yeah,
I mean, let's
Australia
face it,
has
the hi-fi shop in Vu Quang, so...
Yes, I wonder, let's ask, how do you see the future of cryptozoology? Do you fear it's going to become too...
Most of the mysteries, most of the things will never be solved. They'll remain enigmas.
I mean, scientists said centuries ago, that's it, we know what everything is. You know, we've catalogued everything and we're still proving them wrong, so it's going to keep going for a long time.
The publicity about it is in the West, whereas if cryptozoology, a discipline, kind of had emerged in Africa and it had reached the level of interest that it is,
there are
it would be more useful.
Some things we've got high hopes for. I mean,
there's some stuff which probably will be discovered.
Chinese Yeti, I've got quite high hopes for that.
Yeren has got to be the best one with the hair.
Yeah.
They've got hair from Chinese.
And orang pendant.
Orang pendant.
Orang pendant.
Gambian sea serpent.
Gambian sea serpent. There's probably going to be a lot of nice surprises over the next couple of years. Interesting specimens that people might just dig up on beaches, for example.